Hello and welcome to Black Bear Atheist. You may be hearing some background noise, but please ignore that and focus on my voice if you can. This is just like a video that I would like to do. I've been interested in this person for a while. Her name is Margate Margate Wade. Very African name. Her name is Margate Wade. And this is our discussion with Jordan Peterson. She's like a conservative capitalist person. I don't know even how to describe her. And this is a Nigerian perspective with Frank again. I just have to watch this. This seems like one of like my favorite people. Just making a video together, the collab of the year. So we're just gonna get into that and see a perspective on Africa's poverty.
Oh, Africa is poor because of colonization. I'm like, please, let's move on from that.
Well, we can move on from that, and I agree. We can move on from that, but you gotta understand the history here, and I feel like you don't.
Hey, hey, perhaps Jordan Peterson and Margaret Wade are missing something important, right?
Who knows? Let's find out.
So some months ago, Jordan Peterson and Margaret Wade sat down for an hour-long conversation about the economy of Africa, and it was
Honestly, just why? Jordan Peterson talking about Africa. Just why?
really an interesting conversation. I really encourage you guys to check out the interview. Link is in the description. And what they touched on were things you really don't hear in the mainstream media. In fact, for many, what they spoke about is anathema, like how dare you.
No, the views are pretty popular, and if I know about something, fuck, that shit is popular. Just saying, if I find something out, this is how terrible I am in picking up news. If I find something out, this is obviously this is a subjective view, and this is not a metric to read anything by. But if I find something out, that thing is quite popular. Just saying. And I've heard people say this, that colonization is not the reason Africa is in poverty. I've had discussions with people. I have thought of this before. Maybe we're the one doing something wrong. Hell, that was my view until I learned history.
How dare you? I've said something similar on this channel, and the comments I got were not friendly at all. For a brief moment, I felt the heat like what Dave Chappelle felt from those trans people.
These transgenders. These niggas want me dead.
Yeah, so I watched some videos of this Chappelle, and I thought at one point this was funny. Until I learned it really wasn't. It wasn't that it was doing a comedy, it was just saying something and I was laughing to it. This says a lot about me than it says about the joke. There was no joke. It was just talking, and I was laughing. Really not fun times. And if you can hear my roommates in the background, please just ignore them.
I mean, it was so bad. Guys, it was so bad that I just had to delete the video. And I guess the reason why I deleted
No, I actually would have like searched for the video and respond to it. My Nigerian brother, you don't need to do that. There's some people who live for that. Me, I want to react to that video. I want to tell you how stupid you may have sound. Uh, I get this video to do that.
it was, I felt people were not ready to have the conversation. Or perhaps
Bro, before you were born, I don't know how old you are, but before you were born, you look like, you're definitely like less than 40. If you're older, okay, then you're less than 50. If you're older, then you're less than the age of the of Nigeria. which is like 60 something. Again, before you were born, the idea already exists, and people blame Africa. Blame African countries for being poor when they're literally 60 years old. Nigeria is about 60 something years old. If you find a 60 something year old man that doesn't have regrets, that have a perfect life, then you're not talking to a human. But you expect a nation of millions of people to come together after being literally oppressed for decades and centuries, to come together and give you the United States of America, would add 400 and some years to get their shit together. UK, centuries to get their shit together. France, Japan, no, Japan still had their culture, even though they went through crazy shit. You're talking people who actually have a chance to live. Africa never got that. And I'm saying Africa, really, many countries that were colonized never got that. Even though Ethiopia was not colonized, they never got that. And Africa specifically.
Perhaps the way I presented it was not the right way to go about it. I mean, the mainstream conversation about Africa's poverty constantly blames everything on colonialism. And to criticize the...
Not necessarily. I think colonization is not blamed enough, actually. I think people want to blame Africa more. But they gotta understand that the history really is why we're where we are. It would have definitely been a better place if, colonization was not a thing and slavery was not a thing, but it was. So we could look at the past or we could move on. I say we can move on, and we can also look at the past and understand what happened was bullshit. I wouldn't just blame the entire government, the entire Nigerian government, for the fact that we're poor. That's not doing them right. Of course, they're bullshitting us, but it will not be doing them right if we go, oh, they are the only reason. They are the only reason we're fucked up. That will not be true.
continent, and the practice of various African governments can get you the kind of response Mike Wallace got from Louis Farrakhan.
You're not in any moral position to tell anybody how corrupt they are. You should be quiet and let those of us who know our people go there and help them get out of that condition. But America should keep her mouth shut.
And by the way, I'm still waiting for Louis Farrakhan to come and help his people, like he said in that interview, because
I mean, it's like Christians pointing their fingers at like the other videos that I did on this guy, pointing their fingers at Islam and saying Muslims are immoral because what they believe is so absurd. Having 72 virgins in their heaven, they're so fucking horny. But Christians are not any better. Your God is so fucking horny, he couldn't even keep his dick in his pants. He has to fuck a virgin. Actually, she was not really a virgin. He has to fuck a teenager that couldn't consent to have your Christ.
Because Nigeria is still the second most corrupt nation on the planet, while also holding the title as the poverty capital of the world. And that is why I think this conversation was really fascinating, because Jordan Peterson and Margaret Wade were not blaming everything about Africa's poverty on colonialism or imperialism. Instead, they spoke about the need for economic freedom in Africa. Take a look.
Well, you list here in one of your articles where you make reference to these rating systems, the bottom 10 countries for doing business in the world: Chad, Haiti, Central African Republic, Congo, Democratic Republic, South Sudan, Libya, Yemen, Venezuela, there's a lovely example, Eritrea and Somalia. And so there are three exceptions in the African ecosystem. Mauritius, Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa, Botswana, and Zambia. You pointed out in your prospectus, is it prospectus article?
Yeah, prospectus article of Artbridge Institute.
Right, that Mauritius is a rising star, and Rwanda is in some ways comparable to Georgia. So some of these countries have started to get this right.
Yes.
And so what's the consequence of that? And what does right mean?
What they have understood, what these countries have understood, is that economic freedom is at the center for prosperity building. If you take Lee Kuan Yew and Singapore as your example, then it means that, like him, you're going to have to be serious about economic freedom.
Okay. As I mentioned, throughout history, Singapore has been a very hot spot. Just saying, for centuries, Singapore has been a hot spot. You need that passage between Singapore and like India, that entire spot. You need that passage to get to like, for China to get from East China to like the Indian Ocean. That, if you study actual world history, you'll notice that that is a hotspot. That is a hotspot for trade. It's still there today. That's why Singapore is so wealthy, I guess. That's why Singapore is very successful. That's not the case for Africa.
And that's exactly
Technically, it is, but like when you're not the one controlling it, you're getting taken advantage of by the people in power.
what he did. That's what Singapore did. When Singapore figured that out, they went on to put in the right reforms to make their environment some of the most business-friendly environments in the world, one of the most.
I don't think they just discovered that. They've seen that actually worked out for centuries. Again, centuries. Though it was taken over by many people in power, but the actual place understand that they work through trade, they work through outside influence, and the trade routes that they have are the best way to make money for the entire country. And they just capitalize on that. They've known that to be working.
Free.
Now, I'm venturing outside of my expertise here. Actually, I have none. But again, this is supposed to be like a religious video. Let's just continue.
Markets environment in the world, and you saw the magic of Singapore. Today, Singapore is richer than its ex-colonizer, Great Britain. So when I hear people telling me today,
again, history of Singapore understanding how to actually make money before Great Britain colonizer or other places colonizer. Once they understand how they actually make money, how they get this how to actually make profit from the trade route, the tradeway in the ocean, and the fact that they're connected to, it's China able to get goods outside into the Indian Ocean, and that trade route, getting the control of that give them actual access to money. That doesn't really take a whole big development. They already tested under the British governments. That's what they were doing. That's why the British government was profiting from. Why would they conquer them unless they were profiting from it? Okay, because the British were not stupid. The reason why they didn't conquer like a bunch of lands from the beginning and did like, ancient Greeks, they like conquer like just like the ports, because it makes sense. They come by ship and they only care about like the South Africa, the tip. They care about the coast. They don't want to go inland at first because that just doesn't benefit them as much. They don't have that much big army to just spread out. Again, let's make sense, man.
oh, Africa is poor because of colonization. I'm like, please, let's move on from that. Does it have maybe a tiny percentage in where we are today? Maybe.
Yeah, I don't want to call you a bitch, and I will not call you a bitch. Please. Little percent. This is why I don't like people that are conservative and educated, because they just make it seem stupid. They just sound stupid. Like, this woman is definitely educated. I don't know why she's saying shit, but that is not true. it doesn't have little influence.
Maybe, and I don't know. But I know it's not the cause, because if it were many countless countries
I know it's not the cause. Yes, it is. It actually is part of the cause.
have been colonized before, and by the way, colonizing one another is humanity's history. It just happened that
No, we're saying it's alien history. That's what we're saying. We're saying it's alien. This is the same dumb argument by conservatives. Again, I don't like getting political. I genuinely don't want to be political on this channel. This is more on religion than politics. But you see these people mixing it together, and I'm here to like dissect it. She's probably a Christian. Anyways, so we're not saying this is the same argument they make when it comes to slavery. Oh, slavery was a thing before, blah 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 blah. The only difference is that we're now just enslaving black people. Well, that doesn't make an excuse for what was being done. So stop pointing out things that don't really even matter.
maybe Africa has been one of the last, colonized region in the world. So in our psyche, it is there, and it acts like nothing happened before to others. But
So I wouldn't even call what happened before a colonization. Just my opinion. I will call it more conquering and colonization. It's a little bit different. Just a little bit different. I don't know. Maybe I'm tripping. Maybe I'm not.
flash news, it's the history of the world. We've been capturing each other back and forth, all of that.
Now I won't give my comment on this right away. Instead, I'll give voice to the various ordinary Africans who commented on this video. So just so you can understand how some of us feel about colonialism and poverty in Africa.
Yeah, I feel like I won't even get the actual African view. When I was in Nigeria, and I know this is a bit ago, it was like 7 years ago, I did not even learn about most of the history of our country and how it came to be. The dictatorship that was passed down, that we actually only become a democratic state like in the early 2000s. I did not learn that from like getting to grade 5 and grade 6. None of that. I wonder why that is. People are more worried. The average Nigerian, the average African are worried about surviving. And really, who cares? They really don't care. Who cares about who to blame and what to blame? When you're worrying about when you're worrying about putting food in your mouth and putting food on the table for your children, you don't care about history. They're on just survival mode.
This person said, I always find it incomprehensible when people place all the poverty in Africa on colonialism. There might be an effect, but it's not the cause. I am like, we can do better if the government will stop its corruption and greed. We can do better if we remove that thought from our.
Yeah, that's what I thought too until I learned actual history. We are where we are. Again, this country is about 60 years old. I'm talking Nigeria right now. About over 60 years old. Again, if we can find a 60-year-old man that is able to sort his life out, he's probably not a human. And if apparently you were able to see that he's a human and not an alien, then you would understand that he's tripping. He is tripping. Nobody has the answer at 60. Nobody has the answer at 90. Nobody has the answer at 120. Nobody ever has the answer. When you want a nation to figure out its shit in 60 years, you are asking a lot. And that is what you're asking of Nigeria. That is what you're asking of all these African countries. You gotta understand where they're coming from. I am not excusing the bullshit that is going on. I'm saying understand where it's coming from. Just saying it's a little percentage on colonization, you're bullshitting. And you know it, and so do we.
Mind, study hard, and be the best in our field of profession, and use that knowledge to build our countries. People that see themselves as victims will always remain victims for the rest of their lives. The era of colonialism was an era of conquest. Even within us, Africa, we conquered each other, the strong over the weak bowing to the strong. That was what that era was all about. Why can't we move on from that era and create a better country to make our nation stronger in all aspects, so that we won't ever again be a victim to the strong country?
I generally should start skipping this dumb bullshit that it does. Again, the average African is more worried about actually moving on. They're more worried about actually surviving. So they don't really care about that shit. So I don't know which African he found, but these are comments of people that actually have access to technology. I don't think that's an average. Anyways, that's just my opinion. What do I know?
That should be the goal for all countries in Africa. I mean, that's a wonderful comment if you ask me. But you'll be shocked to find people who strongly disagree.
Yeah, and I never asked you. Yet you showed the fucking comment. My brother, make some fucking sense.
People like Don Lemon who think Africa needs reparation.
It's an interesting discussion, Hillary. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll continue to discuss in the future.
But this person
Bro didn't even show the clip of him saying Africa needs reparation. And yes, technically they do need reparation. Technically they do. But we all know we're never gonna get that. It's not gonna happen. I'm sorry whoever was expecting reparation, which is most likely 0% of people. We're not gonna get that. That is never gonna happen. There's not gonna be any reparation from US, from any of this country that stole from these nations. Just saying.
who made this comment is not alone. In fact, here's another person, and the person said, as a Zimbabwean, I really appreciate this discussion. It always makes me happy when I learn of the success of former Zimbabweans in diaspora whose achievements could have benefited the country. We take pride in their success and claim it as our own, yet never acknowledge that our failed system has caused the loss of the brilliant stars to other jurisdictions who are now reaping the rewards of their skills. Now, fun fact, just to back up what that person said. A Nigerian news source recently published a story showing that over 10,000 doctors left Nigeria for the UK in the last 7 years. Meanwhile, the Nigerian healthcare sector is in a pitiful state where you must travel abroad to get major life-saving operation and care. Yes.
That is still due to colonization influence.
Colonialism, I guess, right? Now, here's another comment, and this one is really quite interesting. It says,
You just sound dumb, man. You really just sound dumb. And I know you're an educated person that can actually do research. Right now, you just sound dumb. To say none of this actually has anything to do with colonization, colonial influence, when Nigeria got the freedom, again, just a little over 60 years ago. And you're saying this has nothing to do with colonization. You are tripping, my brother. You are tripping. To say that, you are tripping. Make some sense.
as a black South African, what JP and this lady are saying is exactly what I've been saying for years. But I've been attacked by many blacks and guilty whites. South Africa has been free from white oppression for 30 years, and our idiot politicians.
South Africa has been free from white politicians for 100 years. We've been free. Segregation has ended. Now we should be free. We should all be doing good, right? That's not how it works. The country is still quite separated, as I mean, the last I checked, if I'm wrong here, or any South African, if anyone is watching this that actually done research, correct me. The country is still quite divided. The rich are still on top, just like in America. The whites are still on top. Slavery was ended 400 years ago. Move on. Actually, not 400. 200 years ago. Move on. Jim Crow ended at about 70 years ago. Move on. Forget the fact that there was a bunch of redlining and things to keep black people still down. The fact that there was war on drugs, literally imprisoning the entire community, the male population of the community. But no, guys, Jim Crow was over. Martin Luther King came alive, God sent him, and through him, everything ended. There's no more racism in America. Makes sense. That's not how shit works. You still have the influence. I mean, look at this example. This is just a weird scenario, but think about it. If someone decided to cut the leg of your dad, does that influence you? Yes, in many ways. Your dad can provide for you, and that makes you, in a sense, it cripples you too. That is where we are. That is the trauma that, it's even worse than that black people in Africa, in really all over the world, are dealing with. You gotta, to an extent, understand this and not just say, it's all due to corruption. Yes, but why the corruption to begin with?
Still use apartheid as an excuse for their incompetence and corruption. If South Africa really focused on economic reform,
these people sound so white right now, and they don't even understand how white they sound.
I believe our GDP would have been $1 trillion or more. But the current government have done very little in terms of improvement. In fact,
$1 trillion or more, when they're literally taking out your minerals and you're not even in control of any of that. Okay, keep dreaming.
Most of the infrastructure we are using today was built by our colonizers and the apartheid government. The current government can't even maintain the infrastructure and the institutions that were built by the apartheid government. Every rational and sane person knows that apartheid was evil and atrocious, but to blame a system that has been dead for almost 30 years now is just effing stupid. Our next elections are in 2024, and for the first time since 1994.
Bro, the fact that he agreed that it's only been 30 years and he expect change in 30 years, expect the GDP to grow to $1 trillion in 30 years, while all these countries that colonize you stole from you, use it for their benefit, now they're better places, and you're left behind, and you want to catch up in 30 years. By the way, the people, their mentality, where they are, is still heavily influenced by your colonizers. And you think you're just gonna jump in GDP? That's not how it works. What?
We think the current ruling party will be removed by a coalition between the main opposition party and other smaller parties. God bless South Africa, the land of my birth. You see, only people in the West and really, really dumb people in Africa still think we are suffering the effect of colonialism. Nigeria.
It is quite opposite. Only really dumb people. Since he's using the word dumb now, I am finally given the freedom to use the word dumb. Only dumb people like you, brother, still thinks Africa is poor not because of colonial influence. I mean, little percent of colonial influence, you're tripping. It has a lot to do with colonial influence.
Nigeria was free from colonial rule 62 years ago. The same period as Singapore, which Magat mentioned. It was the same colonial master.
Different situations, different country, Singapore was not as colonized as you would say somewhere like Africa. Different different situations. Singapore was colonized for the trade route, the trade port rather advantage. Africa was colonized to extract goods from their land. Different relationship, you see. Just saying, just saying. And also the system that was left in a place like Singapore can help actually stabilize the place. Unlike Africa, where they were just the only system they left behind was to extract minerals and then sell it to your colonizers. That is the only system they left. How does that benefit the country? It doesn't.
The same British government, but 62 years later, Singapore is richer than Great Britain, but Nigeria still begs for foreign aid from the UK.
Nigeria still begs for foreign. I get it. I mean, I hold this country because I was born there to a high regard. I also thought Nigeria could do better, and I also thought, it was all our fault. But then when you actually look at the situation, you look at the history of the situation, you see it's not entirely the entire picture to say it is all Nigeria's fault. You can't expect this country to get their shit together in 62 years, while other countries had a much long ass time. They did. They had a long ass time, and democracy was just becoming a thing, like 20 something years ago. Wasn't our first election in like 2001? What are these people expecting? Like, what do you expect? Again, I'm not saying there's an excuse for the corruption and stuff. I'm just saying this is expected at the beginning of a nation. I don't know what you want. You want them to become United States overnight? That is not how this shit works. I mean, we all have to work together to make sure we elect people that actually make sense. That's what you're supposed to be doing, my Nigerian brother. But no, you're doing bullshit. Saying the entire fault is your country's and not understanding the history behind it.
Slavery is over. But in 7 years, we've exported over 10,000 doctors to our former colonial masters.
Except we're not the one doing that. The doctors leave because there's better opportunities in the other country. And guess why that is? Because the countries that are colonizers extract wealth from our country, use it to build theirs. And now they're in a better place. And now our doctors, lawyers, or smartest people are leaving the country to seek better places or elsewhere. Now, I hope in the future this actually reverses and changes. Technically, it will. As the country develops, it will. That's the pattern we usually see, and it will show. But it will take time. It will take time. You can't just expect this country to, boom, become United States. Again, that's not how it works. Singapore had a history of being a trade port and actually a system that was working. Just because British took over that system to benefit them doesn't mean there wasn't a system. I mean, they took over a system in China, but there was already a system. There was just a takeover of a system. The system they built in Africa was different. It was just to extract the wealth. That is a terrible system that left the people in a terrible position. And if you do any research, brother, you will understand this. But you don't. You just fucking lying at this point. I mean, I don't know what to say. Again, I hate talking about politics because it gets so annoying. But it must be said, and really, I still feel like this is due to the Christian influence. You can hear the Christianity behind talking about this shit.
And meanwhile,
The dumb idea of pulling yourself by the bootstrap. That is not how life works. Sometimes you need help from people. You can't just pull yourself by the bootstrap when there's no boot. When there's no fucking boot. Come on.
meanwhile, we export crude oil to Western countries but import petrol and cooking gas from them because our government.
Again, when the system is to set up to just extract, that is what we'll do. To make money, we have to extract and then sell it. That's what the system they've built, and that's the only system we have. I think there's actually a new development now, trying to actually have oil refinement in Nigeria and in some other countries in Africa. This would benefit us to actually have a way to actually to make oil. I mean, I don't know what you want them to do. Again, when United States broke away from UK, they were still the people they were selling cottons to. They were still influencing the politics in many different aspects. In the economics, they were still influencing that. It took a long time, a bit of time for them to break away. Remember the Civil War? Yes. Even till the Civil War, which was 1865, and I think it was 1777 that America got their independence. Like more than what Nigeria is old right now. They've been quite old. More than that, they took that entire time. They were still trading with Great Britain in a really great amount. Even after that, they were still trading with Great Britain in a great amount. And that was the colonizers. Which shows the influence, okay, of colonization. Like, are these people just dumb? Oh, wait, yes, they're just dumb. Because if you have the internet and do a quick Google search, you will actually see scholarly studies on this shit.
Government can't figure out how to ensure we have a functional refinery. Even though we have illegal refineries scattered across the riverine areas of this country, they steal most of the country's crude, refine it in the bushes, and sell it to neighboring countries. Yet, the average Nigerian is poor, unemployed, paying through his nose for petrol, and has no access to steady power supply. But hey,
let's blame the government. And who are the government again? The people. Let's blame ourselves for the fact that we're poor. And by the way, the country is only 60 years old. 62, I believe he said. 62 years old. And guess what? Democracy have only existed in the country for 20-something. Before then, it was dictatorship. So, again, what do you expect?
perhaps Jordan Peterson and Margaret Wade are missing something important, right? Yes, we just have to keep blaming colonialism for everything, don't we? Right? The West need to fund our corrupt government with aid, which these government officials will use to finance their luxurious lifestyle and pay for those young girls on campus who warm the bed of these dying politicians. But you can't.
I agree, it's fucked up. But you gotta understand, man. That is what happens when you have a system that is bullshit. That's what happens when you have a system that is just growing. Still trying to figure stuff out. When the population, okay, let me put it this way. When the population is educated, they can vote better. Understand who they need to vote for better. But we haven't even get that here. Have we actually got there yet? No. The illiteracy in Nigeria is still quite high. We need to lower that. That has to be the first step. We need to lower that. Remove religious influence. I swear to God, remove the religious influence. Lower that. Make yourself a secular state. Remove religious influence. increase education, understand how we can actually build ourselves up, observe others, and then try to actually build a better system that was given to us to make us poor. Again, there's things we can do, but understand that this shit takes time. You can't just kick out all the politicians overnight and expect a change. It will still take time. But you can do something. Vote.
You can't say we are corrupt. You can't because we didn't bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But we just opened fire on peaceful protesters during the end.
I hate to do this, but police killed 12 people in Lekki, Alusha. As I mentioned, that's 12 people. How many people died from the 2 bombs dropped on Japan? Oh, more than 12 people? Okay, man.
NSAS protest. We did that. And did you know that we used starvation to almost obliterate an entire tribe during the Nigerian Civil War and beheaded those who criticized the government during military rule? We did that.
Key point: military rule, dictatorship. Again, that was what was happening in the beginning of Nigeria. There was a civil war and bunch of bullshit, and guess what happened? Like bunch of human rights violations. But again, that is what you expect. America had a civil war, and guess what happened? Bunch of places got burned down, bunch of human rights violations. You see this everywhere. Why are you saying? Okay, I'm not giving excuses for it. I'm saying it's expected. So why are you saying it? Making it literally a special plea like Africa is not gonna do it.
But hey, we are just 62 years old, right? That's a young country. A 62-year-old man was definitely born yesterday. You just need to give him more time, right?
Yes, right. I think he finally got the point. I mean, I know he's being sarcastic, but a 62 years old man don't have his life figured out. No matter where it is. You've learned a lot. You've learned what doesn't work and what works. You can advise people to an extent, but he's still like dumb. And like the finance of things. What does he learn? What does actually a 62 years old man learn? Have them take a test. See what they actually have learned. They will fail. Hell, get a 62 years old man to do an SAT. They will fail. Again, 62 years is not enough for a country to make it to make it to your high fucking standard. I get it. I get the feeling. This is where I was born. This is my country. I want it to be better. I want it to be more advanced. I want all this thing. But you gotta understand that it takes time. You gotta understand that what they were ended was bullshit and it was meant for them to fail. It was planned for them to fail. When the only system that was left for them is to extract and sell to their colonizers, if they can't do that, if the oil price lowers, if all that happens, the economy will crash. And they were meant to fail.
Or maybe we need Louis Farrakhan to make good on his promise and come and help his people. I just don't know what is taking him so long.
Okay, that's kind of funny. Again, that's why I react to this video. It's quite funny. Nigerians are funny in their own way. I think I make my point and I don't need like a ending. If you like the video, like and subscribe. This is a long one. I did not thought it was be this long, but my Nigerian brother failed to make sense once again. I think I'm actually gonna make a playlist on this guy. It's making me get into politics, which I don't like to get into. I hate that. So thank you for making my life miserable. Have a good day.